one of the most important series that we've put together through Second Amendment organization, or that I've been involved in, especially at this time, because it really speaks to the need for the gun rights community, the advocates, to speak outside of the community. And I really can't think of very many people who are in a better position because of your experiences in Florida, having two daughters who were at the Parkland school, being right there in the midst of it. Of course, I went down and visited with you right after it, met some other people involved. I've been to the gun shop. I've dealt with some of the law enforcement that responded. I talked to you. Of course, you and your daughter came to a class last year. Hopefully, a lot of people that are listening right now are going to, if they haven't already, end up listening to you read or reading your book, Logically Emotional, about that first year of aftermath and dealing with that. You know, what a journey. You have been around the gun community for a long time, and then to have that happen and go through that journey and now be, you know, a few years removed from that,
Sure.
I can't think of very many people who are in a better position to help understand how a gun rights advocate can talk to people who, you know, not only are new to the gun community, but maybe very, very emotionally tied to being anti-gun or pro-gun.
Sure.
You know, you've
Sure.
that. So before we jump right into that, because I know that's kind of the crux of this, go before that. So before 2018, tell us about you and the gun world and your kind of gunniness, everything you did, Gun News Weekly, all that. Go.
You know, it's interesting because watching your series, this series that you're doing, there's been a couple things that I've noticed along the way, and I'll tie that in as soon as I get through that with you. But again, got into guns, wanted to show people on YouTube that it was okay to be a gun guy, that it was okay to teach your kids how to shoot, that it was okay to not just believe in 2A, you know, and put the sticker on your car, but actually understand it and be able to relate to other people why you understand it. That parlayed into me making, you know, again, a couple thousand videos, all the millions of views, all that stuff. Worked for Funker for a year and worked with some great talent there. Worked with you at PDN doing some writing back in the day, did some things along the lines there. I've been a consultant with Guns Magazine, done a bunch of stuff behind the scenes, but then was also always Kevin the Tack Daddy, and that turned into that Thursday night series that we did for 5 years. You know, me, my brother, a couple of friends along the way, and pretty much every influencer, every advocate, every person we could get on the line to jump on a live show, starting back in 2012. You know, it was an interesting run there with a lot of ups and downs. We didn't miss a Thursday. We missed one Thursday night due to like a real big technical issue where the internet literally was off the street. I couldn't get internet.
Wow.
And what we did and what our goal was to share some stories along the way that showed that regular everyday people such as ourselves, because non-military, non-LEO, the panel's not a bunch of fucking grunts. Love those guys, but again, it's not what we are. We're a bunch of fucking dads. That's what we do. And all, you know, from my brother's a foreman at a major, you know, AC install company, to guy who's an insurance guy, to then bringing in all those other guys. We got real wrapped up in the industry and the community, so to speak, and went to different trainings and were invited to all the events and did all the SHOT shows and the big threes and all the things that you do in terms of, you know, NRA and all that stuff. And it hit a hard wall as soon as those texts came in that afternoon when I was driving around with full kit in my car, running some errands, literally running to Home Depot to do some dad stuff. And 2 o'clock, that, you know, don't come here. There's a code red. Don't come here. And that, what she was telling me was, don't be Rambo. I know who you are. I know what you do. I know how you train. You can't help me right now, but me and my sister are safe. And that's all I really needed to know. The book tells the whole story of what that was like and how it was. But what's interesting is I'm listening to your advocates and the different people that have come on and everything, all great people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, all that stuff, which is awesome to see. But when I tell you that there was a certain segment of the advocacy and gun guy community that shunned me as soon as I had an MSD Strong shirt on, which was supporting my 2 little babies. It wasn't supporting David Hogg and all these names that I've never really mentioned on the internet because I stayed away from talking about all those kids. I didn't want to talk about them. I didn't want to fight them. I didn't want to see them in the grocery store. I didn't want to run into them somewhere. And so I didn't want to be, quite frankly, the asshole gun guy that was going to take on this situation. It's just because I believe in 2A so strong, and I believe that, again, a woman in a parking lot by herself after a long shift has the absolute right to defend herself with whatever tools available, because that bad guy's coming and he wants to do bad things. That never waned. It never stopped. I never said it anywhere, yet there was live shows. I lost best friends. I had friends that I really, again, loved and trusted, and they heard me say things, even if I was just asking questions and saying, don't we need to talk about what we can do to help these kids in schools so this doesn't happen again? And as soon as that came up, all of a sudden, I had this, it was almost a visceral reaction. And then at events, when I met people and ran into them, again, it was almost like you could see it in their faces sometimes, that they realized that I wasn't possibly 100% on their 100% stance, that no matter what, and all that stuff that you talk about on these things, and did I go far left? Did I wane and say, hey, there should be background checks or red flag? No, never. I just asked questions and said, what can we do to secure those places that we send our most valuable assets to every day? The same way that we, defend our banks and our money and our politicians and all that stuff. The same way we defend them, we should be defending these kids so that this can't happen again. I wasn't saying take away your this, turn in that, he shouldn't have that, 18's too young. None of it. But the gun guys, the guys who want me on their team, pushed me off their team in a lot of situations. And it was hurtful. I went through it, man. It took me a couple years to be like, what the, Kevin from Gun News Weekly, what the heck? You've been on my show before. I can't believe I heard you say this to this guy, or you called me and told me this. Or I heard through the grapevine that you're mumbling this, or I went back and heard a live show where you said something, or saw a chat or something. What? And it was all unverified. It was all just random. I could go on a chat tonight or tomorrow, and I guarantee you there'd be guys that jump in and be like, is it true that you turned your guns in? Right. Did you sell everything? Did you sell everything?
Right.
So
don't worry, I voted for Biden. I think you turned him in on the way to drive me to vote for Biden, right?
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So all that being said, that the other interesting thing that I've noticed, and again, to get to the chase, because I know these aren't long chats. Third anniversary of the day, the event, and again, to go through what still goes on in a guy's everyday life, that again, people don't know who I am at the Publix when I'm going and buying food. They don't know that I shoot guns with Rob Pincus and da-da-da. Like, they no clue, right? But there is a chance that I could run into one of these parents. It's happened. It's not just a chance. It's likely. It's a town of 3,000 kids that were at that school that day. And again, many have moved on. My youngest is now a senior. She's going to graduate. She's going off to college. My oldest is going to be entering her third year of school. So we've moved on. And as we always say here, just to kind of wrap that part of it up, we experienced it. We lived through it. We don't let it identify us. At the same time, MSD strong, because what that means to me is family. That means to me hugs and kisses and a lot of healing time and all the things that we went through step by step. I mean, just as a real quick one, just to kind of hammer it home. Imagine being a father and having to take your kids back to the school, to go back to school, where the building where 17 of their friends got killed still stands a month later. Just imagine going through that. There was no empathy from the hardcore gun guys at all. So transfer that over to the 3-year anniversary, and I was listening to one of the dads that I don't mention these names. I just don't. But Fred Gutenberg, he's one of the most outspoken ones. He's the one that gets into the political PAC meeting or the different meetings with Pelosi and these people. He does. He's the guy who said, I'm going to, I think he says something along the lines of, I'm going to, for the rest of my life, fight the fight to get gun violence a thing of the past, make gun violence a thing of the past. Again, I've never had a conversation with the man, have seen him in passing once or twice. But I was thinking about the polar opposite of that gun guy, my 2A, my flag, my guns, you're never doing anything. Can't believe Biden's in office, and get ready, boys, because the fight's coming, all that talk and stuff. And then you have the flip side of the far side on over here, and you have Fred, whose daughter didn't come home one day, and for whatever you want to say about the guy. His political leanings was probably that way anyway, to be kind of anti-gun. But now he's got a purpose. And I was thinking about the fight that they're willing to put in every day when they wake up versus a gun advocacy guy who woke up one day and was like, you know what, that's a cool flag shirt. I own Glocks. I'm going to put a sticker on my car. You know what? I'm going to go to an event. Cool, I'm at gun shows. I'm doing things. You know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to host an event. I'm a gun guy. I'm an advocate. I'm going to be this person against that guy. Good luck. It's a hard fight. It's a hard fight. And I haven't heard anyone mention this, that these people are the ones that wake. It's all those, again, political names that you want to say, that bitch and she's this and da da da. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're all ridiculous too. Trust me. And when they put up a bill and they say, we're going to do this, I just laugh because, again, I've been listening to it for almost 10 years. It's the same thing over and over and over. They're going to take our guns. They're going to do that. Okay, cool. I feel like there's enough people fighting the fight on both sides. And then all of a sudden, Utah gets carry and New Jersey gets marijuana and somebody else all these things happen all the time. I just saw that thing about New Jersey. I thought it was funny. So it's one of the last states I figured it would pass medical. Seriously. So back to the advocacy piece and what can we do? What's your real question here, Rob, is what can we do? How can you talk to a friend? You can't. Just like there's no way. You can have discussions with him, but you're not going to change his mind.
You might not change his mind, and I get that. I think there's extremes on both sides, right? There are people, one of the things that we talk a lot about is sort of the idea that if someone isn't, you mentioned this even with your personal experiences, right? Like here's a guy, as you said, that spent like 5+ years clearly like living that life, right? Educating people in the gun space, educating people about the gun space, all of that, producing content for some, great trainers and educators, inviting people who are advocates and industry reps onto your show, helping spread the message, sharing your bandwidth, creating bandwidth for yourself and for them. And yet, and I've heard it two ways. One, because you aren't on like a top of a van with a megaphone, yelling at Fred, right? And then because you have this opportunity, you could be the one that says, my kids were there, and you're not doing that. But then I've heard this other kind of weird undertone. I know you've run into this idea that, like you said, you have the gun in the truck, the car, right? Like, why didn't you go over there and Rambo it up, right? And I just remember reading your text to me because I was driving through the desert. It was Valentine's Day. I was driving through the desert to get down to Dallas, through like North New Mexico and then North Texas, and then came into cell service, maybe an hour or two after. And I had obviously a flood of texts, and yours obviously were the first ones I responded to. But man, I have daughters, right? So like I'm thinking about that now, like because I've got the stuff in the truck. Right. Sometimes I've even got the badge in the truck and the stuff. Right. And depending on what part of my life it's been in and where I am. So it's like that moment got really, really real, I think, for a lot of people. And there's still a lot of guys, I think, that have that like fantasy mentality of, I have the rifle in case something goes down in my town. I got my scanner and I'm going to go to it. And you had that sort of like, it's like the triangle, right? Like the opportunity, the intent, and the ability. Well, you had the opportunity, you had the ability, your intention, I don't know what it was on February 13th, but on February 14th, what on a scale of 0 to 100, I've never asked you this, certainly never asked you this live before, on a scale of 0 to 100, how close were you to like making that turn towards the school?
There was too much traffic is the answer to your question. By the time I got off the major off-ramp of the major highway, I had been racing with about a dozen responders. We were all going well over 100. When we got to the off-ramp, I had to obey the traffic. They split sides and were going down on both sides in the grass. The one was going literally I had a dozen cars going in front of me one way, the others going the other way. If you listen to the video that I have up, it's the one where I'm in the car where I say, hey, you can hear sirens. I'm on the underpass. I would have had to jump out of my car, gear up, and run with no badge and no plates or insignia of any kind. I would have had to run about a mile. And again, we don't have to discuss that much further. It's just bad idea, not a good idea at all.
that wasn't, as I understand it, and through our conversations, that really wasn't a realistic option in your
It
mind.
wasn't a realistic option in my mind, and I was on comms with my daughters, and they said we're safe, and I said I need to get back I need to get in touch with my wife because she was in a dentist chair. I was blowing her up, not answering, ignoring her. Finally, she answers. I said, "You need to get home. We need to meet at home. We need to be at home." As soon as we got home, that helicopters in the sky and triage and all that stuff was going on. Calls back and forth to them, and then again that moment that happened during that whole thing, that again is the one that's the slow motion and the holy shit, I'll never forget that. It was parking, knowing that they had been released, parking as close as I could and running with all of the families, running with all of the kids running. Like it was all of them had been released and they were all coming looking for their parents. Just the panic in their faces and the noises and the gasps and the crying and the girls running, huddling each other, and just they were all escaping just a nightmare. And what they had seen and what they had run past and what they had experienced, I mean, it was just as fresh and it just happened. And the desperation in the parents looking for their kids. It was one of those slow motion, holy shit, is this a movie? Is this happening to the Tack Daddy? I did say that out loud to myself. I said, when I was driving down there, I was driving because I said to my wife, go get grandma, bring her here. I'll go get them. I don't need you going anywhere near this. I'm going. And I jumped in the car before she could say anything, to be honest. And I got down there as quick as I could. And I was talking to myself the whole way going, holy shit, because we had covered all of them.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Aurora, yeah. And Ross and I had just did Uber rides and filmed a bunch of great content with cabbies out in Las Vegas talking about the Vegas shooting, which had just been, again, the October right before. Right. So you're talking 5 months later.
5 months, yeah.
It's crazy. It's just, and it was the surreal moments of holy shit, is this actually happening? And then again, you get through it all, and then you try to figure out where your place is in the community and the thing and all that stuff. And again, at this point, I do what I do. I train. I have fun. I make sure my kids are, I go back to step one. What was the goal? Make sure they could do certain things by the time they went away to college. That was the goal. They can do all those things. So now,
I kind of want to stop there for a second, because I don't want to miss that three years, right?
Yeah.
When I don't know, did anyone try to I don't know, was there a mass email? Did somebody get their hands on the email list for all the parents of the kids that were there and say, hey, if you want to be at the march, if you want to be anti-gun, David and Pelosi and they want to do it. Was there a recruitment? Was there any moment where you had to confront the reality of somebody saying, hey, you could be on the poster too. Now you could be the anti-gun person because you're part of that community.
Oh, it never entered my mind, Rob.
I know it never entered your mind, but were people presenting with those opportunities kind of around you? And then the question obviously is then
it would have been welcome to that. Oh,
right.
I'm sorry, say that part again.
What did, I got you. So what did you, how did you respond to that? Talking to the people that came in and did you talk to them? How do you talk? Because this is now the ultimate, right? People outside of the gun community who are recruiting you as the gun guy to maybe change teams or whatever.
There's been a couple prior to COVID, so that in that time frame, birthday parties at a buddy's house across the street, or in the neighborhood with all the neighbors that I didn't know and things like that, and people, what do you do? And you get there, right? And what I found was that there was a very strong contingency of dads that now looked at this safety of their homes in a much different way. So the switch went off. It's that thing. If you've never seen it before, you're not going to act. You're really not going to change if there's no pain, if there's no reason. And all these dads and all these moms all of a sudden realize, holy shit. And this is the ultimate thing that I can say is in terms of advocacy and what you could say to people, how you can relate to people. Once you realize that evil exists, then you realize you really can't control that evil. I have no control over whether he's at the gas station I'm going to go to tonight, tomorrow, next week, in a year. No, there's just no control over that. But the fact that you acknowledge that it exists is such a huge first step. And again, and the reason that I've never gone down the road of talking to a Fred or talking to them or whatever is because while I can say, no, I lived it. I had a niece and two girls that were in the building. You can never say what they can say, which is that trump card of, I lived it. My daughter never came home. What do you know?
Right.
And again, I did have one argument where I posted. Actually, I think it might have been when I was posting some stuff for your class when we were trying to get a couple extra spots filled, and I put it in some Parkland dad groups. And one of the dads reached out to me, a different one, and he said, "I'd really appreciate if you take down that picture. It's got the weapon that killed my daughter in it, and it was an AR-15 picture, and it was AR-15 pistol." So, I mean, I really could have had a conversation with this guy about all kinds of things.
Right.
And rather than that, I did the quick step back and I said, you know what? Not worth the argument, not worth anything. Because again, I can relate to this guy. I can empathize with him, but I cannot live in his shoes. I can't be, I'll never understand what he thinks about when he wakes up in the morning and wakes up at night. Because I know what it did to me psychologically for a few years. I mean, even today, I'll share this one with you. I can't not look at the phone now when it rings because I've got the 2 girls' rings, I can't not look at it because something could be happening at Alabama.
Right. Sure.
I can't ignore it for 5 seconds or 5 minutes. I just can't do it. I grab it so like that's what did to me. Like my PTSD is more, I don't even call it that, but if you were to say to me, what are the reverberations to this thing mentally to you? It's little things like that where they're so important to me that I don't ignore the little things anymore. You know what I mean? It could be one of those texts because I've lived it. I did get that text one day.
Right.
So that's
that day could have gone a lot differently after that text.
Yeah.
So what do you so you're obviously you're very much taking a route of not being confrontational in your community. And but your book, talk to me about your book. Like I don't consider your book a gun rights advocacy book per se, right? I don't consider it it's obviously not an anti-gun, pro-gun control book. It's a story of you and your family's experiences that I think is shared in a very raw way. What if any response have you gotten from somebody who, have you gotten any pushback? Have you gotten anybody who said, how can you have written that and still be pro-gun? Like, what do you get? What do you get from there?
So what happened was when I wrote the book, I wrote part 3 first, which is Guns in America. So I outlined the whole thing. I knew what I wanted to get on paper, and I literally sat right back over there every day at 10 in the morning till whatever, got the kids off of school, and then I literally just sat and wrote for at least 2 hours a day on the laptop. Got it all and put it all together. But part 3 I wrote first, and part 3 is, I say it right in there, I'm gonna piss off some gun guys and I'm gonna piss off some real, some anti-gun people. There's some truths on both sides that no one really talks about. So as Kevin the Tack Daddy, as host of Gun News Weekly, here it is. And there's some parts in there where I say point blank, the confiscation thing, the turn it into, the genie's out of the bottle. It'll never, physically, I don't believe that it can happen. Like logistically, I don't believe that our government is proficient enough to collect that type of thing in any way, shape. I just don't think it can ever happen. On top of it, with what we would obviously fight it with. In terms of the political fight of, no, we're not turning in our guns. We're not doing that. But then on the other hand, I said, in terms of you gun folks, you need to realize we're not all gun nuts.
Right.
Just have a dozen guns or whatever the arbitrary number you think is holy shit beyond the Glock and shotgun. 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, 200. I know guys that have all of those numbers. And are they nuts? So I kind of hit both sides and I went down the road of that, and I got some blowback from the gun community because, again, I wrote things that don't step on my snake, and those guys, it crosses the line for them because you're open to discussion with people who are never going to listen to your discussion or whatever you're going to say about the other side. Or again, I'm not having an opinion that has to go fight Nancy Pelosi per se. It can be different than hers. It'll never be in alignment with hers, but just because it waves away from the, again, cold dead hands and all that stuff, and all I ever said was, how can we make our schools safer for kids? That was it.
So when you encounter that, so let's go, we got maybe 5-10 minutes, wrap it up here. And when you have the person who wants to affect, not maybe not a Pelosi, maybe not a Fred, but somebody wants to affect the person who in your community or just knows about the event, right? And they say, okay, well, how can Kevin's story or Kevin's daughter's story, like there are going to be gun owners who want to take what you've experienced, they've read your book, maybe they're going to listen to you talk more, they've heard you talk tonight, they're going to say, you know, one of the Parkland families actually is still super pro-gun, and you know, not the guy you've seen on TV, not the kid that got the award from Second Amendment Foundation, but just like a regular guy with regular kids, and they're still involved in the gun community. Did you know that? Do you think that helps or hurts? Because to me, that's just like, to me, it's an anecdotal. Oh, you've got Fred, but we got Kevin, so there.
Right.
How do you coach somebody through that that's listening to this right now, if at all?
What I'd rather hear and talk about is something along the lines of, you know, you could even say, you know me if you don't, you know. I know a guy that wrote a book after this, and the name of the book was Logically Emotional in Parkland. There's a logic side to this and an emotional side of this. Talk to a guy that's lived the emotional side just like you know, are living in right now, where it's very emotional for you because those things did that thing to those people. There's also a logical side that, again, when you look at FBI reports and you look at statistics and you look at the amount of people that are able to defend themselves every year, again, mitigate, stop, prevent a crime, no bullets even firing, all of those things that guns can do. When you talk to the anecdotal stories of, once again, the young lady who's at, God bless her, she's 120 pounds, but she's 120 pounds. That's no chance against a 300-pound angry person that's hell-bent on taking advantage of somebody. I mean, again, it happens just here recently at a nurse where my wife works. The same type of shift where they pull in at 7 in the morning. Some guy was waiting for this woman at 7 in the morning, threw her in the car, sexually abducted her, dropped her off at the mall. They picked him up over near Tampa several hours later. This shit happens. Evil happens. Logic needs to stand in line with your emotion rather than the emotion being over. Because if your emotion's going to be over the logic the whole time, it's going to be hard for us to have a conversation. If we can get equal, we're cool. I promise never try to over logic you. How's that? That's how I try to, for someone, again, that I meet somewhere that says, you know, say, really, you have guns? Why? Tell me exactly why you have these things. Do you really need an AR-15, dude? I've been asked that way too many times. And I'll be like, emotionally, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? 30 rounds? Holy shit. But I hosted this show for 5 years, and I can't tell you how many times 3 guys broke into a house hell-bent to take advantage of the family and steal their shit. It happens. So do you want an equalizer, or do you want to kind of keep up with them gun? So you're cool with the kind of keep up with them gun, but you're not cool with the equalizer. Does that logically make sense? I always go back to those words, logic and emotion, now, because that's what it all boiled down to me over the whole thing was, what's up, Kev? These live things, sorry. The logical side, the emotional side, the polarization of those two things, and everybody in the middle that kind of goes back and forth. We can somehow equal out logic and emotion, and then you can have a real conversation, because you can include statistics and real reasons why people would want to have these things.
I'm gonna jump in for a second. You're breaking up, and maybe you may be buffering. So
sorry.
Let your bandwidth catch up for a second. Yep, Kevin Dixie's out there. Kevin Dixie did one of these last week. He might have been the first one. He was one of the first ones that did this series. When you break that down that way, I like the way you're saying it. Sort of acknowledge the emotion, allow the emotion to be there. Don't just dismiss it, but you almost have to acknowledge it to diffuse it, right? And it's something, I guess I wouldn't have put it that way 20 minutes ago, but I guess that's it. When I'm talking to people and they'll say, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me. I go, look, I get that it doesn't make sense. I get that it's scary. I get that it's the unknown. I get that you don't like it. But let's talk for a second about, just because you don't like it, does that mean somebody else shouldn't have a right to it, or it may not actually be okay for somebody else? And, you know, I'm talking about skydiving, talk about fast cars, talk about motorcycles, talk about whatever. There's all kinds of things we can talk about. Do you think that's like the key to your being able to maintain, you know, like just normalcy, sanity, whatever you want to call it, in these conversations? Just the idea that you acknowledge the emotion and let it be there.
How how could you possibly talk to some random person who went to dinner with a kid who got shot and lived? Just this, I'm using a real world example here, because don't forget, 17 kids died. 17 kids took bullets, some multiple, and lived through this with their family. Okay, and again, I know that's a big deal. That happens all the time, and I get that. But here in this idyllic community in Parkland, it really is. And then those parents have a dinner with somebody else, and now you're talking to that person. Are you really, as an adult, gonna ignore the emotional side of the thing? Like, really? You're just gonna ignore it and be like, well, if they don't understand that my 2A is more important than their emotion, then screw them. How about I'm gonna understand their emotion, I'm still going to have my 2A, I'm still going to stick to it and everything. And maybe I can influence them a little bit too, because maybe they'll understand that it is really up to them. Maybe we can talk about the cop that didn't do anything, that then the court said he didn't have to. So who really is it on? Throw it out there and let them, swirl it around, and they'll come back to you with, oh yeah, I guess it is up to me.
Yeah, or the teacher or the parent or the kids to be trained. Not the kids that have guns, don't go crazy. Like I get it. Like the kids to be trained to barricade, to make that communication, to be able to, just even the conversations that you must have had or they must have been aware of, all the stuff you did, for them to be able to say to you, hey, we're cool. Like, yep. You're not going to help. Like, we're in the closet, we're barricaded. Like, we've got our people here and whatever else. Like, that is, huge. So listen, man, and people have said it in the comments too. Thank you for your openness, but thank you for years, of sharing this story. You have not been shy about this at all. You have, I think, really, I've been told by people who listen to you read the book, especially on several occasions, just how it shifted the way they think. I don't know, like, I want more people to read it. I want more people to have their thoughts shifted, and it's hard for people to speak as openly as you have, but I think it's hard for a lot of people to admit. Like, I think like some of the people that have told me that your story has changed the way they think about some things, I don't think they would they wouldn't come on live and in front of Gun World, in front of those gun guys, say, oh yeah, Kevin makes some good points and it really made me reframe this, right? Now, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Second Amendment's very clear. It's not clear enough. Right, it's 27 words, right? About 8 too many. Right. Get rid of the first, but it's pretty clear, right? And I think until you change the Constitution, the appropriate amount of restrictions is 0.
Sure.
And I'm really clear about that. That's 2AO's position. We've got our position statements, but I also recognize the vast majority of gun owners are not going to sign off on machine gun vending machines in the middle school. Right. Exactly. And you know that. And the problem is I try to find like 20 of them to get on a panel. And they're like, oh, you mean like in front of people? I'm
going to have to say it out loud.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because you get that pushback. So, man, thank you for being brave enough to stand up to all that, for the amazing job you've done as a father, as a family guy, as a husband, just the way you take care of your family. I've witnessed it. It's amazing. Thank you. And
I pride myself on that stuff these days. That's really what it all came down to in the end is. And that's the other side of the emotional side of it. You're talking about family.
Yeah.
But it all boils down, why are you so 2A? So I can protect my family. Right.
That's important.
Yeah.
What is, where can people, because I know you have you have a new project that's launching this week, right?
Dude, I appreciate it. Again, I'm still doing gun stuff behind the scenes. I'm still actually doing a lot of, again, selling of holsters and these kinds of things that my name might not be tagged on that stuff, but it's still going on, and some other things. But the new project is, again, I kind of sat down at the end of last year after COVID and everything and said, what do I want to do this year? And I got back to the Inspire series. I did the Inspire series. We had guys like Jared Ogden, Little Red Danger, and Mikey Hartman, and other people, Kit Cope, some other people. And we did these long form interviews. Coming up now, and again, if I can pump it, Inspire interviews on YouTube, also on Facebook, and we're doing. I'm doing shorter versions, so a little more ADT focused. The longest thing you're ever going to see is 5 minutes. A lot of 1 minute hitters, a lot of stuff. And the goal is to put some positivity out there, help inspire people, telling other cool people's stories. If there's a cool person out there and I like them and they're doing cool shit, that's who I want to present to the world. You know, I kind of narrow box the stuff with the gun stuff. There'll be some gun people in there along the way, but for the most part, I'm going in kind of a different direction at the same time, still doing it. And again, I announced today our friends at Breakthrough are behind us. So Breakthrough Clean, what a great company. I've always supported them, and they've always supported us. I know you like those guys as well. So they're helping make this thing get off the ground, and hopefully by the end of this year, it'll be a monthly thing. That's what I'm trying to do, is one person per month, a big 5-minute one, and then a bunch of little things along the way to help inspire and put a positive thing in your day, that kind of thing, versus again, it's easy to argue on the internet. I think we all learned that over the last couple of years. I'd rather just put some cool stuff out there. So that's what I'm concentrating on.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you being part of the series and sharing your story. I know that it affects people. Again, I want it to be more in the forefront of the way it affects people. That's what this series is all about.
Right on.
Thank you for the work you do. Thank everybody for tuning in. Do go check out, what is it, like 5 or 6 hours where you read the whole book?
Yes. That's on the Tack Daddy channel. So that's on Kevin the Tack Daddy on YouTube. And you can just look up, Logically Emotional in Parkland. That's the name that'll come up on YouTube search.
All right.
Yeah, that's like a little bit over. I think it's 4 hours plus something, maybe even 5. I don't know.
I thought it was like 5. I don't know. Either way, It's worth it. It's good time invested. Cool. Check it out. And again, thank you, and give the girls a hug. And we'll see you, I'm sure, soon at some point, hopefully down there in Florida.
You got it. Be safe. Thanks. Peace.